So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Arvind. I'm currently a principal product manager at ShareChat. So specifically, I work on the AI product space and get to work on really interesting and important problem statements, specifically pertaining to the short video space, but also have some level of involvement in the broader social media set of rich products that we have. Before this, I used to be at Amex, leading similar teams. So I've donned different hats across functions like data science, product analytics, and so on. And also in terms of domains, obviously the direct domains that we get exposed there is financial services, fintech, and so on, and also certain slightly unconventional domains are also or problem statements are also something that I got a opportunity to work on. So problem statements including those that pertain to restaurant booking platforms, location graphs, taste graphs, gamification, and so on and so forth. So this about sums up my around 10 years of experience in the industry, and right throughout always been a person who's passionate to discuss and learn on aspects pertaining to digital data science, and products. And to that effect, I've eagerly taken on opportunities to play the role of a mentor, a teacher, a speaker, a mentee, and so on to learn further about these interesting aspects. So that's me. With that, I'm eagerly looking forward to this conversation with Omar. Omar, do you want to introduce yourself and then we can kick it off in terms of the topics?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Arvind. So about my intro, I am currently working as a product manager in Accenture. So this role is primarily about building AI-based solutions and products, which are going to be B2B products, helping all the clients that Accenture has. So it's enterprise level clients and enterprise level products. Prior to this, I joined Accenture from my campus. I completed my MBA in 2018, and before that, I worked as an application developer on mainframe platforms. So I had around 4 years of experience prior to MBA, and there I worked mostly in the BFSI domain, working for multiple clients across Infosys in the BFSI space, where I was focused mainly on the application development and maintenance part of all these systems which are involved in doing like credit rating agencies and even uh, card registration, credit card registration and offers. So that was like my pre-MBA work experience, and post-MBA I'm focusing on all of the operations side of the business, where it is mostly related to building products which are solving problem related to your F&A, supply chain, procurement. So Accenture is like one of the largest companies in terms of getting outsourced business for a lot of these Fortune 500 clients, and there's a huge potential of leveraging AI to solve some of these problems, right? Uh, which are like totally manual. So that is where the AI component comes in regarding building the products. So yeah, that's about it from my side.
Thanks, Omar. So a lot of interesting aspects that we've worked on. So maybe let me set some context on what sort of a conversation we can aim for in the next half hour plus duration, right? So I was thinking we can potentially touch upon one to two topics, go into a fair bit of depth in it, and according to the how much time we utilize, we can sort of scale out of one of them and move on to the other one. So broadly, that kind of a setup works, right?
Sure, sounds good.
So maybe let me start with the first problem statement, and we can keep it fairly interactive, and you can ask questions through which you sort of make the problem statement a bit more specific if you want, and then we align on a level of specific definition of the problem statement, and then you can move on to solving it, highlighting the trade-offs and the prioritization aspects that might be involved. So the problem statement, let me start at a fairly general level, is to build a chatbot product. So you're in a company where a chatbot product is a need of the hour as a next step. And obviously there are some logical expected OKRs that would be there when it comes to such a product. So you're trying to maximize them. So Let me start off by keeping it fairly general at this stage. Maybe if you want to ask any clarifying questions, you can, and we get to a more specific problem statement and then forge ahead.
Sure. So this chatbot that we are trying to build for a specific company, is it going to be a customer facing chatbot, or is it going to be like a chatbot for the internal employees of the organization to optimize the internal processes of the organization?
So you can assume it to be a customer facing chat.
Customer facing. Okay, and this chatbot would be specific to a particular functional domain, like it is only going to be used for answering queries related to, let's assume, payment issues, or is it going to be related to addressing issues related to new member registration to for that company, or is it all combined together like a single chatbot interface, which is going to plug into these individual functionalities as per the conversation, right? So is it like a broad chatbot that we are trying to build to address all of the company's problem, or is it focused on just one function of that company?
So that's a good question. Let me also cover what kind of company this is, right?
Okay.
So imagine this is a food delivery. So list of restaurants are there, you order
Yeah.
and the food gets delivered, that kind of a setup. And let's start with the conventional chatbot use case within such a company. That's the problem statement.
Okay. Okay. So I'm assuming that this is going to be mainly to address customer queries when a person makes an order and they have any kind of issues related to that order, right? Either they are not able to apply a coupon, or if their order is late, or there's some issues with the payment or discounts. So all those queries are included in the spectrum of the chatbots realm, right?
Exactly, that's right.
Okay, that helps. And is there a specific target that the company has to build this chatbot? Are they looking to improve the customer experience, or are they looking to just reduce the number of contact team members that they have to address the customer queries? They are seeing that they have to involve a huge number of people just to address these customer queries which are coming in, and they want to optimize that, cut down some resource cost, and that is why they are trying to build this chatbot, or is it just purely from enhanced user experience perspective?
So we are try to check multiple checkboxes. So you've identified two key stakeholders, right? Customers and their experience should be enhanced. That is also a goal, as well as from the company standpoint, cost or certain other elements can be optimized further. That is also something we are doing. So both these objectives and potentially that's one of the advantages with the data science product, right? So you solve the problem, there are going to be indirect benefits also that accumulate, right? So you can start with trying to frame the OKRs, which would, calculate or account for both these areas, and we can build further on that.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I think I've got like a good overall understanding of the problem that the company is facing. So in order to now start development of this chatbot, uh, the key thing that the company or the product manager who is kind of helping in building this product needs to identify is the product architecture, right? I mean, what are the components that they will be using to build this product? Are they actually trying to build a native chatbot using like complete own tech stack, like building everything from their own, right? If that is a requirement, or they can use a lot of the available services that are like provided by a lot of these cloud companies, right? Amazon, Google, Rasa. So these are a couple of the options that can be deliberated upon in terms of building this chatbot product. And in terms of the operations, right, like starting the development, the most important requirement, I guess, would be to capture the pain points. So the existing customer support team, which is addressing a lot of these queries, they would have this huge functional experience. So as a product manager, I would probably start by interviewing a lot of these end users, people who are addressing the queries of the end users, sorry, not the end users, but from the company aspect. So there's a lot of knowledge to be procured from these people. They would identify that. So we can build this chatbot in phases, right? Some of the transactions or conversations that will happen can be very transactional, right? So you have to identify the fallout scenarios, in which case the queries have to be addressed by some specialist. Have to identify, like, overall, if you collect an intent of around 800, just for random example, like 800 type of use cases are there. So I would have to identify, okay, like in my stage one of building this product, I have these 400 use cases that are more complex and which should still be routed back to a human before it can be resolved. But I'll also identify some low hanging fruits, where these conversations are usually regarding, where is my order, or discount code was not applied. So some things like that which can be easily solved by the chatbot without actually requiring a human intervention. So the first step would be to have this logical partition between the complexities of the overall interaction that can happen, and the best set of people or the best users to give us that information is the people in the current contact support team, who are taking these calls day in and day out. So we'll have to create a log of all these conversations, see the different type of intents in which these type of questions are asked, and then try to create different utterances of all these intents, right, in which how that same question can be asked. uh, One more aspect would be to also get in touch with some of the end users, like the end customers who are actually raising these questions, trying to understand from their psyche that in which all scenarios they would directly want to jump to a human conversation rather than continuing to indulge in a automatic conversation via chatbot, just so to identify that there is no negative impact on the customer experience. A lot of the time end users are not interested in talking to a chatbot for a long period of time if they have complex queries, so they really want to directly go to a human conversation. So considering both of these aspects, we'll have to build the functional aspect of the chatbot. But that is okay, so that is the functional aspect, right? But if I, like, I'm assuming that if the company is building this chatbot for the very first time, right, so they would have to build a lot of these other components, which is like 50% of the overall development will happen, would be very use case specific, functional specific, that would be focused towards solving the problem related to this problem of order related issues, or and anything related to this problem. But 50% core components are required to be built, like a log analytics module or a knowledge base, by which end users would be like a product manager or the product team would be able to identify where is the fallout happening of a conversation, why did the users fell out of that conversation, why were they, like the kind of feedback that you can get from that system, right? So to store that feedback and continue to improve the accuracy of the chatbot and improve the overall quality of the chatbot conversations, we need to build like some kind of a log analytics module. Then there has to be knowledge base that needs to be created, which can be changed, right? So if today this chatbot needs to be reused in a completely different process, so I would have to work on changing my knowledge base so that the other components still remain the same, but by changing the knowledge base I can move to a different function and create a different uh, conversation flow, right, which is going to solve a problem in some other business area of that client. So
So let
these are a
me
couple
start
of.
off with one question that pops up here, right? So obviously, when it comes to any data science product, data is the fuel that is key, right? So especially when it comes to such a product, how are you going to get feedback from the concerned user, and what could be the challenges in getting the necessary amount of feedback?
Okay, so I think there are limited ways in which we can get feedback, because the user span of attention would be very limited in this case when trying to go through a conversation via chatbot. So again, very standard simple ways of getting some feedback is to give like a like dislike option right after the end of a conversation or during the fallout, that how satisfied were you with this conversation, right? Maybe we can have like a Likert scale also, just to get like more data rather than just a like dislike button, to see what type of like satisfaction the end user is having with this conversation. Another alternative to get these type of feedback is, right, like if you have closed a conversation which you are which you have were having earlier, like for whatever reason, and before you start a new conversation, you have to like mandatorily provide feedback regarding the last conversation, which can be a comment based feedback, or it can be like some drop downs or check boxes, so that you are getting these categorical variables in which it's easier to build a model rather than getting a lot of these unstructured data in the form of comments, even though it might be more useful, right? Because then you will be able to like build your models better. So these are a couple of options I feel that can help the backend team get the relevant data from the end users, which is going to be very important to improve the product. But I think besides this also, right, some of the very essential things and one of the very basic things which people usually miss out in the age of this like huge data and analytics is directly like talking to some focus group discussions between the primary users, right? So you can do an analysis to identify which set of people are ordering most from your portal, right? And you can do a demographic breakup to see, okay, this type of users are doing most order and during this amount of time, and what is their cart value. And then you will prioritize that which feedback is more important for me, and then have a focus group discussion with those set of people which will provide a meaningful feedback to you in order to improve the product. So these are a couple of ways I would go about getting the feedback to improve the
And
product.
through all these ways, what is your thought on selection bias as a concept? Does it come into play in some circumstances, and how do we deal with it?
Yes, I think selection bias I think that or confirmation bias, right? These are like very important aspect to validate, right? Whether whatever decisions we are going to make does not include any bias from our side. So you need to have that diversity in your sample set, right? So it needs to be spread across. Basically, if I am going to make certain decisions, I need to make sure that the sample set that I have received is not biased towards any particular parameter. So it's not all male respondents that have provided me the response. It's not a particular age group. It's not particularly from a city. So I need to factor in all of these aspects, right, when getting the data in, which is going to be used for the model building purposes. So I think just to remove that, I need to be very cautious during the data preparation stage itself. So a lot of data pre-processing has to be done prior to it going into any kind of model building exercise, right? So I think a lot of time needs to be spent on the data collection and the data pre-processing part to remove any chances of any kind of bias creeping in, right? Alternatively, like you can still have bias even after all of these precautions. So you might want to run like couple of models running, not just like one model, but have this kind of a cross models, two three models done between to validate the assumption that okay, the results that are coming across by using any one particular model is not drastically different from any the same like using this some other model, right? Because if the problem is generic, the solution should also be inclined towards like a generic solution rather than focusing towards a specific segment. So I think the segmentation is a very important problem, and for that you have to get a lot of these data about the users who are providing the responses. So I think your data model should factor in capturing all of these elements about your end user. So right at the time of registration, maybe you need to ask all these questions related to diversity, related to your age, related to, I mean, all the other factors which might be required.
Makes sense.
Sorry. Yeah.
And touching upon another dimension, right? So a
Yeah.
user could potentially have a positive feedback or a negative feedback when it comes to the chat experience he just had, right? So out of these two different types of people, which of these feedbacks might not be fully available to you versus the other one becomes fully available to you?
Got it. So I guess the negative feedback would be more in terms of the volumes and numbers rather than positive feedback, right? So even if like I'm having 80 good experiences with the customers, I might not get all the 80 good feedbacks from the end users. But if I'm getting like only 20 negative experience, I might get all the negative feedbacks. So definitely I will give weightage accordingly, right? When trying to prioritize between the positive feedbacks, because mostly positive feedback people will tend to ignore giving feedback in those type of situation. But definitely, if it's a negative experience, that would be escalated, and through multiple channels also, maybe, right, it will come to me. So that needs to be factored in, and like accordingly decisions should be taken which should not overcompensate for any particular problem and create a different problem, right, together.
Exactly. So we've all been there, and we've all
Yeah,
seen people around us, customers. What is a negative feedback? We make it our mission to
yeah,
convey it, whereas a positive one can be skipped past because of laziness, or you moved on to your next thought process. Like,
yeah,
so that is also a fairly good watch out. So good that you were able to latch on to that question correctly. So a lot of biases that need to be kept in mind. Like let's say let's try to wrap up the data layer of the discussion here, right? So
okay.
anything else that you want to call out in terms of either the data or the instrumentation or the analytics, which is maybe important to keep in mind specific to this particular product and in this question?
Yeah. So as a product manager, I mean, I wouldn't really be able to go deep into the technical aspects of the model building, but the very critical aspect to identify initially is I need to have a very specific problem statement which needs to get tied with the exact data points that I'm going to collect to solve that problem statement, right? So that needs to be very crisply defined. It has to be considered like I have to solve X problem, and these problems are going to move these business metrics for me. Like if I'm focusing on reducing the churn, right? So now I really need to be on the lookout of these type of patterns in the conversation where customer is talking about I'm going to uh, close my account, or I'm going to uninstall the application, and I- take these signals, right, either using sentiment analysis or some using natural language processing. But I need to pick those specific conversations and those specific feedbacks as my leading indicators to prevent attrition, and that is where the intelligence of the chatbot will be really required, rather than being a generic chatbot to close the transaction, right? So I think as a product manager, it's very important to explain to the data science team that even though you are building a chatbot right now, my objective is to reduce attrition, or my second objective can be to increase my revenue, in which case I would be more obligated or more focused on giving discounts or cashbacks and all that. And accordingly, it will help even at the tactical level, right? The decisions that are supposed to be taken in terms of handling a conversation, right? So it's very important, I guess, initially only to define all of these different problem statements and tie it to a business metric, and then accordingly monitor the performance of the chatbot, that how much this release of this version has helped me move this metric for the organization. So I think that's a critical component.
So a very valid point. So, in the interest of time, let's maybe move on
Yeah.
past the data layer. Next important layer could be features, but then again, that's fairly easy, and you've also touched upon a few aspects there. So we can move on to the algorithms per se. So, if if you want to highlight some of the data science algorithms that, in your experience or in your assessment, fits well here, we can spend next few seconds, 1 minute or so on it, and then we can move on to the next area.
Sure. So I would not really be able to like go very deep into any of the models, but I think one of the like models that can be used here to identify the insights from the chatbot conversation can be like logistic regression. We can try to use to identify what is the overall sentiment of the conversation, right? So which can be extrapolated to get a lot of other additional information. So that is one area. Then uh, I think uh, K means, right? K means again to identify like what are the commonalities across different type of feedbacks that I'm giving. So like more of an unsupervised learning method, which will help me identify some of the unknowns, right? Which I am not really aware about. So if I deploy those type of models, rather than it being like a known problem which is focused on causality, I am not sure what the problem is, so that type of model will help me identify that these type of common feedbacks are coming, either positive or negative, which I should focus on. So some of those models I think are relevant to be used like as an experimentation or just to get some sense check from the data, right? That these type of insights I can probably try to get from the conversation.
Got it. Got it. So, I guess let's move on to the next area where actually you touched upon one part of it earlier. So, uh, the broader problem statement is, let's say, to build a very good chatbot to address all the business and user and product requirements, right? But that can be broken up into many different data science products or models, right? So, sentiment analysis. So, in this particular case, that has its value. It will help you do some things better. On the same lines, can you think of any other model outputs if your data science team could give you? It will help you make this product better.
uh, so I mean just thinking, right? So there are like a couple of models like a conditional random field, right? So that can help me to a certain extent to identify basis the different type of conversations that I have seen, that uh, in in which of these conversations or in what particular domain of this overall again within a domain like a subdomain, so where is this problem coming from? So if I try to break down a problem statement related to ordering into couple of things, right? So one can be your delay in delivering an order, or sometimes I was charged extra, or sometimes it can be related to the quality of the food, right? So I have some of these variables. So I have a lot of these variables, and that again getting that feedback from the customer regarding these variables, that where is it that the problem is happening, again mostly from the negative side, might be from the positive side. I can try to think about having some kind of a conditional random field model, which will be like a very simplistic model, but it will predict which variable is mostly affected, and whether it is affected in a positive manner or is it affected in a negative manner. So I can work with that team, like that operations team, to improve that area, which can ultimately result in better customer experience and less problem happening because of that particular variable, right? So I guess I would already have a provision of including all of these features as a feedback layer to get feedback about what is the problem that the customer is facing, and then I would get a lot of data back from the customer. So if it's either in one of those areas which I have uh, predicted, might be, or some new area also, right, which is not predicted. So I think mostly like a conditional random field type of algorithm will be able to give me this output, which I can use to work with that team to kind of solve this problem.
Got it. That is one valid way of thinking about it. In terms of, let me share maybe one or two more
Yeah.
examples. Like, so, as an example, let's say lifetime value of a customer, right? So, with that, do you see any thing that you can do better if your data science team gave you some model outputs
Mm.
pertaining to this?
Yeah, so I think a lifetime customer value definitely. I'm not sure about which models they will use, but what I can definitely use as a data point to make some decisions is now this is the customer, right? Customer who is having that conversation at that point of time. If using the whole historical orders that a customer has done, basis the different type of queries that the customer has raised, uh, we can try to come up with a score for that customer, right? That okay, this is, or maybe that score can be multifaceted. So this is the overall score of a customer, but this is the probability that the customer is asking for like complaining a lot, right, related to food quality, and customer related to like getting discounts, or any positive feedback that I am getting from the customer. So I can have like all that data presented to me in that historical format, right? And I can use that data to build some feature for my like either for my automatic solving of the problem by when a customer raises a query, or give that as a input to the end agent who is solving this problem when dealing with that type of customer or a segment of that customer, that what is the overall value that the customer can potentially give in the future, like maybe like calculating the price of a stock, right? Discounted cash flow method, and basis that, and basis the current order value against which this order is disputed, the customer, like the agent, can take a decision, or the bot can take a decision to decide what should be the next action associated with solving the problem for this customer, right? So if there's a particular pattern regarding this customer canceling orders a lot, or faking the quality of the product and getting discounts back, I think my historical data will point me towards these kind of anomalies, which would help in kind of getting these customers flagged at a certain point, and then even considering providing less and less cashbacks, and less attention to these type of customers, right, when addressing their problems, because I will definitely have the information regarding the historical lifetime value that the customer has, and also the potential, right, that I might be getting about the customer. So I think a lot of features, lot of attributes would be required to derive that, which includes average order value, and yeah, I think most of these inputs would be required for me to make a decision regarding what is the next step to be taken in case of these type of conversations.
Got it. Makes sense. Let's move on to the next area or sort of complete the circle, right? So metrics that we would have started with. And so basically, can you comment upon the data science metrics that might be essential here, or also comment upon the product metrics that you're moving, and like highlight which are the maybe easier metrics to move, which are maybe the tougher metrics to move.
Yeah, so I think some of the key data science metrics for me would be like looking at the precision and the recall, right? So in case I would try to decrease the false positives, right? And so I would focus on increasing my precision and decreasing, rather than like increasing the recall, right? Because it's okay, like if a incorrect customer has got additional discounts when it is not required, but I don't want to lose out on a customer by giving him, like not giving him some kind of a good experience when they're eligible for that, right? So these are some of the data science metrics I will closely monitor, right? What is the overall precision and recall of the models, so that I don't identify too many false positives, right? True negatives are okay, but false positives should not be there. And yeah, in terms of the product metrics, it will be or product metrics or a business metric, right? It In terms of just the business metrics, it will go back to my key metrics, which are related to my revenue, and then my churn of the customer churn, and total amount of uh, maybe the provisioning that I have to do in terms of giving out cashbacks or canceling order, so that if I have to track that, I am tracking that, and that also needs to be tracked as part of this improvement, that less and less of that is happening, and along with not compensating for the customer experience part of it, right? So these are the couple of metrics I would like predefine before even going into this project, right? And I would closely monitor these metrics.
Makes sense. And let's say taking the simple chatbot use case, right? So what are even false negatives and true negatives in this scenario, as an example?
So false, like, okay, let me take first example of a true negative, right? So a true negative would be that if the model is predicting that this customer is actually incorrectly claiming something, right? So that is like maybe a negative experience, like but it is actually true, right? So it's like if they have asked for a cashback because of some particular problem, it is actually result of a correct experience, right? I mean, this is something that has been happening to that customer. Whereas if I pivot it, right, and try to see for the false positives, so this would primarily be like uh, when so in this case, right, what my model is going to be trying to predict is that how many of the cases would would have would be eligible to get some kind of a discount or a rebate after a complaint has come in through the chatbot. And even if those customers have got like they are not eligible to get a cashback, but my model is predicting that okay, yeah, they are eligible to get a cashback. So that is like a false positive for me. So these type of cases would by incorrectly getting classified as like false positive, I mean correctly getting classified as false positive, but that is like still okay. So that is not the area of major concern for me as of now. So I will try to like balance the model by looking into these false positives and making sure that like okay, that's like false positives is okay, but like there should not be this other case happening a lot.
Got it. Got it. So, and moving on to the product metrics. So, one part of it is usually to reduce the number of calls that go to a human
Human, yeah.
team, right? So, um, like, how do you plan it out that the bot in its early stages is maybe not as good as it can be? Over time, it gets better. That's the nature of many of the AI products, right? You give it more data and you tune it further, it gets better. So, how would you sort of plan out this balance between the number of queries that gets handled by the bot versus the existing customer support team? How will that kind of balance evolve over time?
Hmm. So I think it's very important. Again, I will go back to that aspect of getting a lot of insights from the existing customer support team, right? So that even the transactional flow, the information aspect, the information or the just the query handling aspect of bot is very rich. So if I identify by doing initial analysis that okay, 70% of my problems are coming towards are about this particular area, so I will initially only create that conversation flow to address the queries which are more common. So I have a closed loop in those type of queries, like what can potentially be the problem if I was not able to apply a coupon code. So in that case, the potential options can be that I am not eligible to apply for that coupon code because I have already applied for a coupon code, or it's only available for the first time when you are ordering, or it has to be a minimum cart value. I guess a lot of these options would be provided at the time of discount only, but maybe customers are not able to comprehend that and they are asking these questions. And sometimes it might be a product issue, right? So addressing all those type of basic queries which are happening a lot, right? So even before, like if I just track the customer life cycle, like a customer user story or like user journey, so I will map that user journey out. I will try to identify that what type of problems that the customer face, or is the problem happening mostly before placing an order when they are addressing their queries, or after placing an order. Before placing an order, again it will be multiple stages, so while selecting a product, or while checking out, or while making payments. So all these type of different possibilities, I will try to have that as kind of a decision tree made initially, which will be implemented to make sure that yeah, definitely these type of problems should be handled automatically rather than this going to a fallout, right? And a customer has to handle that. And I will only try to focus on I mean at a certain point of time, focus on solving really complex problem, right? Even I mean not exactly in this domain, but what I have seen even in my experience is sometimes end users are very verbose in terms of like, and especially not in India but maybe in other countries. So they will like have a lot of information provided upfront which might be comprehended by a human, but the bot will get confused. So even if they have to say that okay, I have some problem in repaying a bill, right? Or repaying a bill of a, let's assume, a telecom provider, uh, and I need to ask for a discount or something, so they will first of all start by citing all their personal problems because of which they are not able to pay the bill, right? So that will confuse the bot. But that is the way to go. Like in order to really build the NLP capability, the bot should be able to, or the algorithm should be able to understand the real intent, even from these meaningful sentences. Everyone will not be like very to the point. Like we Indians usually are to the point, right? Coming in as small number of words as possible, coming to the point. So it's easier for the bot, right? So initially, the focus would be to just get a proper list of all the functional use cases, have them implemented as kind of a decision tree, which is easier to be implemented either as an informational bot or a transactional bot or an adjudication bot also. Like if I have to internally query multiple databases to get some other type of information, the bot should be able to do that, right? Rather than a human going to look at that. So And then when the real problem starts is like these long sentences are being asked or written where the bot itself gets confused, or fancy English is being written, or something other problem statements, which even might be related to one of these functions that I already have a decision tree, but just the NLP component is missing to understand the real intent, is where the conversation should go back to my human agent. And as it progresses, I will continue to monitor, and this model will itself be able to hopefully learn from these type of intents and improve its ability to identify intent from different type of utterances, right? So that should be the roadmap.
Got it. Makes sense. So a lot of interesting additional details we could discuss on the threads we open, but in the interest of time, maybe let's try one last question on this topic, right? So either we could go with roadmap or maybe let's try this, right? What could go wrong when you try to build a chatbot product? Like some things could go wrong in the very initial stages itself. Some things, even after you think you have really nailed the product, could still go wrong. So, what could be those watch outs that you would be sort of very wary of and watchful of?
Yeah. So the very first thing that can go wrong is I mean, I think that the customer experience can definitely be affected. If the bot is not very efficient in addressing customer queries, like sometimes when you try to have it's not usually associated with business problems, but in general, if the bot is not able to comprehend your queries, and it is also not able to redirect you towards a human agent, but still trying to go through multiple conversations and try to just circle back, right? So whenever you will build, you will have this flow, right? So after this point, if it's not clear, then go back maybe. So if it goes into that loop, right, that can very negatively impact my customer experience, and that is a big problem that can happen. The other thing is if it overcompensated, right? So that I implement a chatbot where I'm overcompensating and I am trying to give the benefit of doubt to the customer, right? Or vice versa, and that is adversely affecting my business metrics. So either I'm very cautious about giving out discounts because the revenue of the company is getting impacted, and I have a very strict policy towards giving any kind of cashback discount, and it is getting addressed by the bot, and it is a query is getting resolved of the customer, and customer is not getting that, right? And again, that's like the positive for customer, so it's good for customer experience in some sense, but the opposite can also happen, that most of the queries are getting resolved and customer is satisfied, but I am prioritizing that over my revenue, right? So it's like a huge financial loss for the company if I'm leaving these kind of decisions to be automated and processed through a bot, right? So that really has to be balanced, right? There has to be some thresholds. And like in credit card, like in during my prior work experience, whenever during my engineering work profile, then I was working for a credit card company, so they used to launch campaigns, and there were a lot of checks, right? So if they are running a campaign which is having this much threshold to give out discounts, and that threshold is again limited to person per spend, and then overall threshold is also there regarding the campaign, that okay, that is it, right? Even if like one person has got certain limit, it is not exceeding those threshold. So all those factors have to be from a policy decision, has to be very carefully calibrated before experimenting with chatbots, especially for these type of processes where any kind of financial details are involved, financial transactions are involved. So what I can do to fix it is maybe first of all try to just have these for non-financial processes, right? Maybe try to see the accuracy or the overall customer experience that is getting affected by implementing a chatbot, in terms of just getting an order placed, right? So I might just want to build a chatbot which will help you place an order. So right, rather than going and selecting product from a cart, if I build a chatbot which is helping me just place an order, so there is less impact to my business, right? Again, there is some impact. Some people would still prefer to go towards the previous approach of ordering but this is like a new customer experience, right? And you don't know what the customer really wants until you give it to them. So I will try to build a chatbot in this space first, see how it is improving and how confident I am in the ability of chatbot to handle more crucial aspect of the business, which might have some challenges, right, which might have some more implications than what was conceived. So yeah, I think these are some of the bigger problems that can happen if it is not carefully thought through.
Makes sense. Yeah. Actually, like even the best data science product in and of itself may not be able to solve everything. It has to interplay well with the design, the thought, the systems thinking that goes behind the scenes, right?
Yeah,
So, um, you rightly pointed out about how the user could be frustrated because the chatbot, at least in its initial days, is inadequate, right?
yeah.
So, uh, any such specific points of frustration that can be addressed by thoughtful design?
Um, okay, so I mean, if I'm like it's the first release of my product and the chatbot is live and for the end user. So just from a process point of view, right? I need to limit the chatbot's capability, or maybe have some kind of a be more liberal on the fallouts, right? So in case at that point of time, probably my intents would not be very rich. Even my utterances of each intent will not be very rich. So I need to have some kind of a simple decision, right? Like decision step in my model that wherever it is, I'm not sure exactly how it will work, but if a response is being interpreted by a confidence interval, so initially I can have very less confidence interval to take the next decision automatically. So if like the ability of bot to interpret a decision is less than 70%, right, then I will route it to a human agent, right? If it is, or maybe it has to be, initially it has to be more than, sorry, I've said like, I mentioned the wrong number. So initially it has to be more than 95%, right, the confidence score of interpreting a response. If it is less than 95%, then it gets routed to a human agent. Whereas as it matures, I can gradually reduce that confidence score now that I'm covering more functional areas, so that even if it is now at 80%, right, I am still confident enough to continue the conversation via a chatbot versus routing it to a human agent. And that is how I will be able to tie the data science metric related to actual model response with the business decisions that I can take to reduce my workforce count accordingly to handle whatever volumes of queries that are coming in.
Makes sense. Cool. So this was a pretty good part of the first convo, right? So in the interest of time, let's move on to the next
Yeah,
problem statement.
sure.
Um, let's consider a e-commerce giant, right? So what are the different data science products that could be part of the stack of such a e-commerce giant? Maybe let's briefly for a minute or two list out them, and then out of those we can maybe pick one and converse a bit more deeply, and that should sort of wrap up the conversation.
Okay. So yeah, for the e-commerce system, purely from an, I think, data science perspective, right? I think most important would be a recommendation system, just to increase the cart value, right? Just like that's how everything works these days, right? Just recommendation systems are everywhere. So I think that is very important for any e-commerce company right now. Besides that, also some of the other aspects which other data science component that is important for a e-commerce company is image processing models, right? Ability to identify what is in the image, right? Like a lot of these models which are relevant, which can have further implication regarding finding duplicates in your product catalog. But even image processing in general, right? Image processing is very important. So and all the products listed on an e-commerce website would have some kind of an image. So maybe just for tagging purposes only, let's assume that I don't want to manually tag all the products that are getting updated or added into my products catalog. So just basis image, it automatically identifies and catalog it, tag it. Then again, some NLP based systems to, so that the descriptions about the product which are getting added, that are also being interpreted correctly, and it can help me in improving my search system, right? So search system is also again very powerful. I think e-commerce search would work very differently from your normal search, right? So I think that search component is again a very vital part. and search needs to be very focused on the type of products that e-commerce company is selling, and it has to be custom built for that e-commerce company definitely. So I think these are a couple of I would say like maybe the top three tech stack or data science products an e-commerce company should focus on. Obviously the other soft simple products from a user experience perspective or just from a software engineering perspective are very important, but from data science I think these three are very critical.
Fair, fair. Yes, these are fairly critical. So maybe let's pick recommender systems, right? So what would be the major objectives you want to achieve through a recommender data science product, and uh, maybe tie it to the business metrics, and then we can move on to maybe the next layer of discussion.
Okay, so I think the business objective of having this recommendation system is to increase my top line, right? I think increase the cart value of the customer. If you are tracking that, then most likely you will have this recommendation system built in at the like last layer of ordering a product, to show products which are again bought by other customers similar to you, right? Or like products which are bought along with the product, which we mostly see in all these e-commerce platforms. And ultimately all the business objective about having these type of feature is to increase the cart value and thus increase the revenue of the company, right? So that I would say is very critical. That's where the uh, core I mean objective of having some recommendation system comes in. Also the user experience part, right? I think again if I'm buying a TV for instance, mostly, and the customers also don't know, right? Maybe they would also need a TV stand, and sometimes it is not coming along with the TV. So just having it shown at that right point of time while making an order for a TV is a very good user experience, right? Because after ordering maybe customer would realize that maybe I needed that, or like it can be some other product also, right? So doing some segmentation and then using that for, like for recommendation, I think that is very important. So I would say yeah, that is the core benefit of having some recommendation system in your e-commerce products.
Makes sense. So increasing the order value per se, and after the person has placed the order, or all, there are also going to be additional steps, right? So maybe some of those orders will be returned, and for an order to be returned, it's not obviously the ideal case scenario for you, right? So if you think from end to end, there are maybe different problem statements that are there, right? So maybe can you highlight what are the different problem statements could be there, and is it possible to solve them all together, or maybe we approach it one by one and those systems interlink, or there is probably no one right answer here, but this is more the intent more here is to discuss and kind of understand the thought process, right? So can you take a shot at it?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think that is again one of the biggest problem. Most of the e-commerce company has like high number of returns, right? They are definitely tracking it. It's a very big impact. So that return again might happen because of two reasons. It's an actual valid return because of the product quality or some other reasons. Like it's actually a negative customer experience. Something has gone wrong, and it might be some like random returns happening because of like some customer are like that, right? Only in some of the products it can be because some vital details were missing, if I just take an example of clothes or shoes, right? So that sizing is a problem, right? Like maybe the size did not fit what I ordered, what I saw. Even different brands might have different scale in which they are giving out the size of the product. So that is one area where I think AI in general would have a very significant role to play in terms of reducing the number of returns happening because of these reasons which are valid, which could have been avoided, right? So for me to build some kind of a capability for a end user while ordering, that they are able to clearly identify that what is the size, or maybe like if I just have some kind of a I mean it can be very, very futuristic, like a blockchain technology has potential to show the whole life cycle of the product, right, from its sourcing, right? So where did it come from, what all components were used. So if that type of visibility is provided while ordering a product, which is a technology problem, right? So once those type of technologies can be implemented, then I think it might have an impact on getting these type of returns issues addressed, which is actually happening because there was a problem. So I think there are a lot of ways in which different problems can be solved. One definitely related to size can have some solutions in the image processing area, right? So even if I have to buy a shoe, I might potentially directly upload a picture of my existing shoe, and that size could automatically be scaled to be compared with some of the shoes that are available in the images, right? And then it will tell me, okay, yeah, this shoe will probably fit you perfectly well versus some other shoes which might show as the same number but it is not really my size. So I think image processing using a lot of these AI capabilities has a lot of potential to improve the business metric related to returns, right? So yeah, I think that is one area where it can help solve some problems.
Makes sense. Very valid point. So, this was again a very good discussion on this topic. In the interest of time, maybe let's wrap this up at this level and uh, move on to the next section where we can sort of summarize the learnings and stuff, right? So, let me pause. Goran, you want to jump in? How was like? I hope this can be a cut point, right?
Yeah.
So, and Omar also jump in. Like, how was seemed okay? Like, except for the last section where we can each summarize the learnings, stuff like that. Apart from it, it seemed okay.
I'll let Goransh first provide some feedback.
Yeah. Goran, you're there.
Hi guys, I'm right here. I'm right here. I did not realize that I was on mute.
Hey, no issues. How was it?
Yeah, I think it was a very invigorating interview because I do not come from a tech background. I think a lot of it did not make a lot of sense to me because you guys were talking about how you're going to build AI powered chatbots, and the second question was also really good. So as an overall basis, thank you so much for the interview. I think it went really well. It was a little over the like it was a little longer. So so because we all because people are not that engaged with videos like this online. So we might be reducing the duration a bit. Apart from that, I think everything was very good. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it felt good, but yeah, we both are on under the spotlight, right? So always helps to have a different viewpoint. So this really helps to set sort of expectations on how well it went. And I think you will obviously have more experience in cutting these videos. So potentially you can cut it off before the Amazon like e-commerce part, if that makes sense, or maybe there were a lot of fillers me or Omar
Yeah,
might
yeah,
have used. Cutting that, maybe it comes within a sweet spot kind of a duration. In
yeah.
which
We'll do all
case,
that. Yeah,
hmm,
we'll send you a video that we think makes sense,
hmm,
and then you guys can tell us if you want us to remove some part or you remember some part that you would want us to add, and
hmm.
we can do that from there. That's so a completely open conversation. That's not an issue.
Cool,
So,
cool.
teacher, if you so I didn't have so the last few minutes I could not hear. Have you given Omar feedback on the interview?
So that's the only part. Like only the interviewer has to sort of summarize and give feedback. Is that the
Yeah.
only section, or at the that's the only section, right? So
No, only
that's
you have to
why
give the feedback.
cool, cool, cool. So that's the only part left. So just give me a minute or so to gather my thoughts. I'll
Sure.
just say that, and then we can call it wraps. And like you sort of cut basis your judgment and let us know your
Yeah,
initial draft, and then on top of it, we'll just chime
yeah,
in
yeah,
with our thoughts.
yeah. That makes sense. Meanwhile, while Arvind is thinking, Omar, if you could quickly take 30 seconds and probably tell our audience what you think they might learn out of this interview, that would be great. What, according to you, is
Sure,
something
sure,
that users might learn out of this? Yeah,
sure. Okay. So shall I go now?
yeah.
Is that
Start,
okay?
start,
Okay.
start.
Okay. Yeah. So I would like to give like general recommendations to non-technical aspirants, like people definitely who are in the data science area. They are like better people to give experience from how should you hone your technical skills regarding model building and using statistics. But purely from a business aspect, right? Since I am a product manager, the major aspect I would like try to give candidates who want to go into this track is to like, first of all, you have to be, in order to be a product manager, you have to focus on the what, right? The what is the problem rather than the how, right? The how is something that data science folks are obviously there for, and they will help you solve the problem, but you have to really find the problem statements, the what of the problem statements, which are potentially big problem statements, and solving that can create impact, right, at scale.
Yeah.
So, and that can only happen once you have like that level of business understanding and some software engineering understanding. So these two are very critical, and people should focus on these two aspects, especially ones who are not really focused on going into, or are not very proficient in coding and going into like technical modeling aspect of the of the industry, but are looking to solve the major problems, right? So that would be like a short
Yeah.
recommendation.
Thanks so much, Omar. Thanks so much. Uh, so I think once Arvind's ready, we can start then. We can probably just wait till then. Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. Just give me a minute, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me give it a shot.
Sure.
Cool. So it was a really good conversation. A lot of relevant points covered. So I'll just start off by highlighting the aspects that went best, right? So definitely the fact that your immediate prior experience has been in this NLP related area, your products tend to overlap with that, right? So that definitely showed in terms of some of the details that you could reference about chatbots. So that was definitely a good point, and also a lot of the user centric aspects, which are some of the major things that the product person in the team needs to own, those also came through. And even in terms of approaching the product as such, you could highlight that there are maybe certain aspects which are not necessary to be targeted in the first phase of the product, phasing it out, a proper roadmap. So these are some of the aspects that went best. In terms of aspects that could have maybe been a bit more better is like the transition from defining the problem statement and then mapping it onto a data science product that could solve it, and then maybe highlighting the different components of a data science product, any data science product, right? Data is a core component, then maybe creating features out of it, the modeling paradigm, the metrics, and so on. So these are aspects you definitely had a very good handle on, but to a certain extent, I had to lead the way for you to move on to that topic. So if each topic came in a natural order in the interview, that would have been even better.
Yeah.
You did have the hang of all the aspects, and I think largely that was the kind of vibe I got from the interview. So, and that aside, many of these interviews are going to be, the processes are going to be conversations spread across at least 4 rounds or more with multiple different people, right? So the intent tends to be that you're trying to understand which are the strongest points, the spikes of the individual concerned, whereas which are the other areas where they at least exhibit the ability to pick it up later as per the demand of the situation. So that way, this was definitely a good conversation where I could get a sense on which are the areas you're strong on, and also get a sense that okay, there are some areas which you may not be currently strong in, but you definitely have the willingness and drive to further pick up on those areas. So that's sort of my read of this conversation. It was fairly interesting, very good topics, and also like you pose the same question to two people, the answer is going to be very very different, even if there are so many common elements, right? So a lot of your prior experience colored your answers, and there are things that I frankly could get to learn or hear for the first time. So definitely, it was very interesting from my side, and hopefully, it was the same positive experience for you as well.
Sure, definitely. I think some of the aspects that you highlighted, right, which I mean, really made me think beyond the level I'm comfortable with, which was really helpful. And I think that gives a potential to go and explore that area a little more, right? So, specifically, some of the questions related to what can potentially go wrong even after all the steps that you have taken, or how to potentially reduce the problems that can happen during even the first launch. So yeah, that's definitely directions which even as a product manager you should be thinking about, and having like lot of plans, right, A B C D, to handle all those situations. So definitely something to explore and identify the role of technology in terms of addressing these problems. So yeah, that's very helpful for me. Thanks a lot.
Cool. So that
Hello.
wraps up this. Yeah.
Yes.
I think we can. I think this was very very good, Anirudh. Arvind, thank you so much. Arvind, thank you so much, Omar. Uh, what happened, Omar?
No. Nothing.
Something seems wrong. Okay. Then to can we close this here then? Thank you so much, guys, for your
Sure.
time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. One small request: if you both could drop your photographs in the group today, so we
Okay.
can start working on the creative simultaneously. That would be great.
Got it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you 1 second, I close it. So if you've seen the current videos that are live, or if you've seen any of the posts that have gone out for TPF interviews, you would be able to understand that we put two photos over there of both of you, the interviewer and interviewee. So in order to do that is only what why we require the photograph, if that's possible.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Cool
want
then,
us to like
Umar,
mail
yeah.
you the photo or something?
अब WhatsApp पे भेज दो.
Okay, sure. Yeah, in that
हाँ
group,
हाँ.
right? Yeah, we
वो जो
can.
ग्रुप है ना अपना, उस पे आप भेज दो चीजें.
Sure.
That's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
ठीक है then. Thank you so much, Omar. Thank you so much, Arvind, for your time on a Sunday evening. We will get back to you as soon as we have the video now.
sure.
Chalo.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. Bye bye. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Sure.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.